Good day, my name is Audrey Chweshe. I'm a Great Zimbabwe University student at Herbert Tepo Law School. I'm presenting on deconstructing legal personhood. So my main aim is on challenging the legal personality, but I'll begin by constructing legal personhood and then I'll focus on deconstructing legal personality. I was assigned by my lecturer, Ms. Nkosana Maposa, to present on deconstructing legal personhood. So, Nigel Sandmon's observations that jurisprudential reflection upon law has never been clearly separable from the intelligent development of doctrinal ideas is very much relevant in the case of legal personhood. The concept of legal personhood refers to the recognition of an entity as having legal rights and obligations that are recognized under the law. Legal personhood is a fundamental concept in legal systems worldwide and has been instrumental in the recognition of various entities as legal entities capable of acting in society and entering into agreements with other entities or individuals. However, the concept of legal personhood is not without its flaws and limitations, particularly when it comes to addressing issues related to discrimination, social inequality, and broader societal concerns. So my paper will explore the concept of deconstructing legal personhood and consider the implications of such a move in terms of social justice, equity, and the need to reform the legal system. The principle of legal personhood worldwide, it is encompassed in the orthodox principle of personhood. The old system of legal personhood is the orthodox or traditional principle whose origins date back to the fall of Roman Empire. The classification of law by Roman jurist Gaius into that concerning persons, things, and actions is usually mentioned. The first reference to the person or thing distinction. Legal personhood comes into existence during the late Roman Empire, where it was developed to recognize individuals' status before the law and protect the church's interests. The concept originated in the Roman legal system, which recognized the individual's ability to own property and enter into contracts, and sue or be sued as necessary. However, the notion of legal personhood did not fully emerge until in the Middle Ages. The idea of legal personhood in the Orthodox Church was founded by theologians and legal scholars such as John of Damascus, who sought to understand the relationship between the church and the state. So I'll move on to explain on the legal capacity to hold rights and bear duties. Most scholars claim that legal person is a being that has ability to hold rights and bear duties, thus considering legal personhood and the capacity to enjoy rights as synonyms. So the famous Roman jurist Gaius stated his textbook, The Institutes, in the 2nd century AD with a section of law of persons. He opens his book with the following statement. The fact that legal subject is the center of the legal world means that he or she is the bearer of rights and duties and capacities, such as being a legal subject or a persona. In brief, a person in the eyes of law, as per the traditional approach, has an obligation or duty. There are two classes of legal persons or subjects in terms of the orthodox principle, and these are divided into natural persons, denoting human individuals who are legal persons, and artificial or juristic persons, meaning any other types of legal persons such as associations, liability companies, and foundations, all of which can own property and enter into contracts in their own names. So I'll move on to explain the different type of persons that we have under the natural persons. In contemporary legal system, the pragmatic natural persons are human beings and those who have been born or who are currently alive and those who are sentient. I'll move on to juristic or artificial persons. A juristic person is a social entity, a community or an association of people which has an independent right of existence under the law. It can be the bearer of judicial capacities and subjective rights and the accompanying legal entitlements and obligations, just like a natural person. The law on how these acquired person would differ from nation to nation. So I'll move on to look at the advantages of the orthodox theory or traditional principle. One of the main advantages of the traditional approach is that it provides clarity on what entities should be considered legal persons. This is because it relies on fixed criteria and well-established set of rules. For example, under the traditional approach, only human beings and certain types of organizations, such as corporations and governments, are considered legal persons. This makes it clear which entities are subject to legal protections and which are not. Another advantage of the traditional approach is that it provides certainty. This is because it is based on well-established criteria that is widely recognized and accepted. For example, if corporations want to enter into a legal contract, there is no doubt that it has legal capacity to do so. Similarly, if a person or organization wants to sue a corporation, there is no doubt that the corporation has the legal capacity to be sued. So, also to add on the list, the traditional approach to legal personhood provides a stable and predictable legal framework. It allows individuals and institutions to know their legal rights and responsibilities, as well as their legal relationship with other entities. The traditional approach to legal personhood provides clarity and certainty to legal disputes, enabling effective and efficient resolution of issues. This predictability enhances legal systems' credibility and legitimacy, as it ensures that legal outcomes are based on clear and consistent principles. So I'll move on to look at other perspectives on legal personhood. So I'm going to look at personification of a set of norms as presented on by the Kelsen Edge pure theory of law. Some think that individuals have certain rights independently of what other humans have, and some think to say that an individual has rights only means that somebody has granted him or her those rights. In other words, all rights are equally artificial conventions. This position leads to the conception of legal personhood as useful fiction or mere convention that needs not to be related to any physical or metaphysical reality. Philosopher and legal scholar H. Carlson is the main exponent of this position. He proposed the pure theory of law because he believed politics and morality were contaminating traditional legal philosophy, reducing the law to a social science. Carlson claimed that the concept of the legal subject or person is simply an artificial aid to thought, a heuristic concept created by legal cognition under the pressure of a personifying anthropomorphic legal language in order to illustrate the data to be dealt with. Hence, person is simply a personifying expression for the unity of a bundle of legal obligations and legal rights that is the unit of complex of norms. So legal personhood understood as status originated Roman law where the legal person referred to the role played in society. People in ancient Rome could be free or slaves, citizens or foreigners. That is to say, free Roman women and men who were not subjected to the authority of the paterfamilias. Everyone had a status in ancient Roman because it simply meant having a position with Roman society. Unfortunately, legal personhood as status was used to discriminate and exploit different groups within society. Even though legal personhood as a status is mainly linked to Roman law, some scholars have continued using it during the 20th century and 21st century. People still have different statuses within society that are relevant to the law, such as being citizen, resident, married, single, divorced, or heir, among others. So I'll move on to a brief synopsis of legal personhood in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a country that mostly recognizes the orthodox approach to defining legal personhood. Similarly, there are two legal persons which are natural and juristic. Animals are not regarded as persons since they fall within the definition of property in terms of the Criminal Code of Zimbabwe. However, the code only defines domestic animal as property and not wild animals, but the Parks and Wildlife Act gives ownership of wildlife to the state and custody of the wildlife to the community. Ownership falls within the realm of the law of property, which means that they are regarded as property of the state. Also considering the applicable common law of property in Zimbabwe, domestic animals are property, wild animals, res nullius, that is property not belonging to anyone. I also state the ability of juristic persons to have legal personality. It is articulated in the High Court rules, Rule 11, which governs the local standard, which include associations and firms. Also, the state is regarded as a legal person in terms of Section 2 of the State Liabilities Act. The shortfalls and limitations of traditional approach to legal personhood. There are several disadvantages of traditional theory in jurisprudence. One of the disadvantages is overemphasis on abstract concepts. Traditional theory in jurisprudence tends to focus on abstract concepts such as justice, liberty, and equity, which can be difficult to define and apply in practical situations. Another disadvantage is lack of attention to social and historical context. Traditional theory often neglects the social historical context in which the laws and legal system operate. This can lead to a narrow understanding of law and its effects on society. Another disadvantage is lack of interdisciplinary perspective. Traditional theory in jurisprudence tends to be discipline specific, with little attention given to insights from other fields such as sociology, history, and psychology. This can limit its ability to provide a comprehensive understanding of the law and legal systems. So now I'm moving on to deconstructing the legal personhood. Given the flaws and limitations of legal personhood, some scholars have suggested that it may be necessary to deconstruct the concept entirely. Deconstructing legal personhood will involve the removal of legal recognition for entities such as corporations, non-profit organizations, and other legal entities, instead focusing on the recognition of individuals as the primary legal subjects. The concept of legal personhood is central to the functioning of law and society. It is the idea that certain entities such as individuals and corporations are granted legal rights and responsibilities, including the ability to enter into contracts and sue or be sued and own property. However, legal personhood has traditionally been limited to human beings and in some cases, corporations. This has raised questions about whether the concept of legal personhood should be expanded to include other entities such as artificial intelligence and animals, as I shall discuss the aspects below. I'll begin by discussing artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence entails the simulation of human intelligence into machines. Artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly important part of our lives, and its impact on society is growing rapidly. Artificial intelligence systems are being developed and used in a broad wide range of fields, from healthcare and education to finance and transportation. As these systems become more advanced, there is a growing recognition that they may need to be granted legal personhood to ensure their rights are protected. One of the main arguments for granting legal personhood to artificial intelligence is that it would provide a legal framework for addressing the ethical and legal issues that arise from their use. For example, if an autonomous vehicle is involved in an accident, who is responsible for the damages? If an artificial intelligence system makes a decision that harms someone, who is liable? By granting legal personhood to artificial intelligence, this issue can be addressed more effectively. However, there are also concerns about granting legal personhood to artificial intelligence. One concern is that it may lead to the displacement of human workers. If artificial intelligence systems are granted legal personhood, they may be able to enter into contracts and own property, which could lead to job losses. Another concern is that it may be difficult to determine the legal and ethical responsibilities of artificial systems, particularly if they are highly autonomous. Also, I'll move on to animals. The concept of legal personhood has been raised in relation to animals. Currently, animals are considered to be property under the law, and they do not have legal rights. However, there is growing recognition that animals are sentient beings that are capable of experiencing pain and suffering. This has led to calls for animals to be granted legal personhood. One of the main arguments for granting legal personhood to animals is that it would provide legal protection for their welfare. Currently, animal welfare laws are often weak and poorly enforced, which leaves animals vulnerable to abuse and neglect. If animals were granted legal personhood, they would be entitled to legal rights and protections, including the right to be free from cruelty and exploitation. There are a few countries that recognize animals as legal persons, meaning that they are granted certain legal rights and protections similar to those afforded to humans. One example is New Zealand, which in 2015 granted legal personhood to Wanganui River, which is considered a sacred and integral part of the Maori people's identity. The law recognizes the river as having its own legal capacity, with rights and interests protected by a dedicated legal representative. In 2016, India's Uttarakhand High Court ruled that Ganges and Yamuna rivers be given the status of legal persons, with two officials appointed to act as their guardians and represent their interest in court. Also, another example is that of 2018, where Colombia's Supreme Court declared that a bear named Chucho, who had been held in captivity for years, was a legal person with rights to be freed and rehabilitated. This legal recognition of animals as legal persons aims to protect them from harm and abuse and to ensure that their interests are taken into account in legal proceedings. They are usually granted in cases where animals or natural resources are considered to have cultural or ecological significance. However, there are also concerns about granting legal personhood to animals. One concern is that it may be difficult to determine which animals should be granted legal personhood and which should not. For example, should all animals be granted legal personhood or only certain species? Another concern is that it may be difficult to enforce the legal rights of animals, particularly in cases where their welfare is being compromised. Also, I'll move from the shift of corporates from property to persons. The main case when discussing about corporates is the Solomon versus Solomon case, and it is the landmark case when it comes to corporates legal personhood. Solomon versus Solomon and Company Limited was a landmark case in UK which was decided by the House of Lords that established the principle of corporate personality. The case involved Mr. Solomon, who had set up a company to take over his raw proprietorship business. When the company failed, the liquidator argued that Mr. Solomon should be personally liable for the company's debt. The court held that company was a separate legal entity from its founder and shareholders, and therefore Mr. Solomon was not personally liable for the company's debts. This established the principle of corporate personality, which means that a company is recognized as a separate legal entity from its shareholders, with its own rights and liabilities. The case was significant because it recognized the legal status of corporations as independent entities, separate from individuals who own or run them. This principle has been influential in the development of corporate law around the world and has had significant implications for the way that businesses are structured and operated. The Solomon case remains an important precedent in corporate law and continues to shape the way that companies are understood and regulated today. I'll also refer you to a number of cases that establish the company's legal personality. The Leonard Carrying Company Limited versus Asiatic Petroleum Company Limited. This case affirmed the separate legal personality of companies. It held that shareholders are not liable for the debts and obligations of the company beyond the amount unpaid on their shares. The court pierced the corporate veil in this case, but emphasized that should only be done in exceptional circumstances. Another case is that of Woolworths Limited versus Strand Palace Hotel. This case demonstrated that corporations have certain institutional rights like natural persons. Woolworths argued that a bylaw allowing only natural persons to be members of a casino was unlawful racial discrimination under the Race Relations Act. The court argued showing corporations have rights against discrimination. Overall, the concept of legal personhood is a central aspect of law and society, but it has traditionally been limited to human beings and in some cases, corporations. However, there is growing recognition that legal personhood should be deconstructed to include other entities such as artificial intelligence and animals. By granting legal personhood to artificial intelligence and animals, we should be acknowledging their rights and recognizing their intrinsic value as living beings. However, there are also concerns about the practical implications of granting legal personhood to these entities, and further debate and the discussion is needed to determine how best to address these issues. In Zimbabwe, we have Section 19 of the Companies and Other Business Entities Act, which entails that companies have the capacity and powers of natural persons of full legal capacity. So now I'll move on to implications of deconstructing legal personhood. That is to say, if we deconstruct legal personhood, and then what happens next? So deconstructing legal personhood would have significant implications for the legal system and society as a whole. On the one hand, removing legal recognition for entities would promote greater social justice by removing some of the advantages that certain entities currently enjoy. Additionally, removing legal recognition for entities would help to promote greater accountability and responsibility for individual actions, thereby promoting greater accountability and justice. Another advantage is that it results in increased accountability. Granting legal personhood to animals would increase accountability among those who work with animals. These include animal owners, breeders, trainers, and those who work in animal-related industries. These individuals would be held responsible for ensuring that animals are treated humanely and that their legal rights are represented. Another advantage is that it outlines changes in animal-related industries. Granting legal personhood to animals would likely lead to changes in animal-related industries such as agriculture, entertainment, and research. For example, in agriculture, farmers would be required to provide more humane living conditions for animals, and entertainment, animal acts would be prohibited. In research, animal testing would be subject to stricter regulations, and alternative methods of research would be encouraged. Deconstructing legal personhood would also improve public awareness and education. Granting legal personhood to animals would help raise public awareness about animal welfare issues. It would also promote education and understanding about animal behavior, needs, and rights. This could lead to changes in societal attitude towards animals and greater appreciation for the intrinsic value as living beings. Another advantage is that of ethical considerations. Granting legal personhood to artificial intelligence would also raise ethical considerations, particularly around the development and use of these systems. This will include issues such as the potential displacement of human workers, bias and discrimination in artificial intelligence, decision making, and potential for artificial systems to cause harm or violate human rights. There is also regulation. Granting legal personhood to artificial intelligence will also require the development of new regulation and governance structures to ensure that these systems are developed and used responsibly. This would include the establishment of standards for artificial development, ethical guidelines for artificial intelligence use, and mechanisms for ensuring accountability and transparency in artificial intelligence decision making. However, removing legal recognition for entities will also have significant implications for the legal system and society as a whole. For example, many legal systems rely on legal recognition for entities such as corporations to function effectively. Removing legal recognition for entities could lead to significant disruptions in the legal system and could create a range of challenges related to how legal rights and obligations are recognized and enforced. Additionally, removing legal recognition for entities could have economic implications, particularly in countries where corporations are a significant driver of economic activity. Without legal recognition, corporations would no longer be able to enter into legal agreements and would be limited in their ability to engage in economic activities. So, in conclusion, the concept of legal personhood has been fundamental to legal systems worldwide, but it is not without its flaws and limitations. The recognition of certain entities as legal persons has been criticized for perpetuating inequalities and creating a legal framework that favors certain entities at the expense of others. Thus, deconstructing legal personhood would involve removing legal recognition for entities such as corporations and promoting greater recognition of individuals such as the primary legal subjects. Such a move would promote greater social justice and promote greater accountability for individual actions. However, deconstructing legal personhood would also have significant implications for the legal system and society as a whole, and would require careful consideration of the implications and challenges that such a move would entail.